Okay, here's another installment of the signal bridge. In the previous video, I had talked a little bit about what I wanted to do with potentially having a walkway across the top, but I'm going to come back to doing that later after I take care of this problem. I've got another thing to consider, what to do with the drop wires that are going to have to run down the legs of the signal bridge to get to some holes that'll go down to under the layout. Now, on my cantilever signals that I built from NJ International Kits, they had kind of a hollowness to them, and I was able to run the wires inside there, and with a little bit of paint, you really can't see them. This is a little bit different because there's really nothing hollow there, but I hit upon the idea of using coffee stirrers. You see, they're a good width. They're hollow, as you can see. And I was thinking I should be able to get a couple of 28 gauge wires down through those coffee stirrers. So I decided it's worth a try. So using a measuring device, I decided I'll cut some of those coffee stirrers to length. Now the next great challenge is I've got to get the wire. I've already got the resistor soldered to the wire, and I thought, will that fit through the coffee stirrer? And I was lucky it did. I thought it might be close. And then, of course, there's the splice sections with the heat shrink tube. And I thought maybe that'll be a tight fit. And it really wasn't. They fit through fairly easily. So pulling all the slack through the extra wire, I think I allowed for 2.5 feet of wire to get down to where they need to go underneath the layout. So having pulled the wire through, I position it next to one of the legs and taking a look at it, I think it's actually gonna work pretty well. And you can see I can snug it right up to one of the legs and a little bit of glue there to hold it in place. I think that should end up working pretty well. So having done it for one leg, I just have to do it for the others. There I was pointing out, you can see the red wire of the two. The black one blends in, the red wire doesn't. That'll have to be hit with some black paint, I think. After setting up the one of the other signal masts, the wires for it, that is, I discovered here was going to be a little bit of a problem. The splices in the wire were right at the bottom of what I'll now call the conduit, right next to the foot. And that's obviously not going to work. So I'm going to have to put a little bit of extra effort into this, take it out of the conduit and redo the splice such that the splices will be inside the conduit. And in fact, the splices for the red and the black wire can't be right next to each other because then they also will not fit. So they have to be offset a little bit. So back to a little soldering. Here's a little gratuitous advertising for the Hakko 633 soldering stand and the, what the heck is the model number there? The Hakko 599 little soldering tip cleaner. It uses some wire, some brass wire, and I found it actually to work a lot better in my opinion than using a damp sponge. So I've really enjoyed using that. I think it's a good piece of gear. And having said that, it reminds me of when I was in the Marine Corps back in the 80s, and we had a guy who was a weapons instructor, and every time he told us about or demonstrated a particular weapon, he always ended by saying, "That's a good piece of gear." M203 multi-purpose flame weapon, that's a good piece of gear. M1911 pistol, that's a good piece of gear. Anyway, moving on through the soldering here pretty quickly. So I'm just making some new solder joints there in order to get those splices in a better position. I thought I was kind of done with the soldering on this project, but sometimes you got to come back and do it over again. And let's see, we're still going to fit through the conduit there. I knew an electrician years ago that told me, he said it's a lot easier to pull the wire through than to push it. And he's right about that. So let's see, we'll snug that up there and take a look, and I think that's gonna end up fitting a whole lot better. And we're not gonna have a problem with the splice right there by the foot. So I think that's going to work pretty good. The next challenge is to find out what adhesive I want to use to stick those conduits to the leg. And I have a couple choices. I can try cyanoacrylate adhesive, the old super glue. There you can see with the two conduits in place for the two signals on that side, that does end up looking fairly good. So I could try CA, and I think another choice is white glue. Oh, you may have noticed that measuring caliper there. I had a really nice one I had for many years, and suddenly it stopped working. One of the battery contacts just decided to break. I don't know why, and I was doing some work on that particular day, and I had to go get another caliper. I really like having it around, but the Ace Hardware unfortunately was closed at that time, so I went and got that one there at Walmart. It actually works fairly well. The problem is it doesn't go down to what would it be, hundreds or thousands of a millimeter like the other one did. So I do like the one that that goes down to a bit tighter measurement, but the Walmart one works very good. So I put some glue on there and using some of my binder clips to hold the conduits in place while they dry. Meanwhile, while all that's drying, I thought I'd take a few minutes to show a lot of my lighting. I've done a lot of lighting on my layout. I may not be the best at it, but I have done a lot. Truly, I have hundreds of LED lights on the layout. There's the control panel that operates all the mainline turnouts, and you can see I have put lights in buildings. I've put up light poles all over the place, and I've spent a lot of time at it. I have a lot of experience. I think I may have mentioned in a previous video, I buy a lot of my small gauge wire from Evan Designs, as well as some of the LED bulbs. And I found a supplier for things like those gooseneck lights, the light poles in the town center there. I get from Eve Model. It's spelled EVEMODEL, Eve Model, on eBay. And I started buying a lot of these lights and things a few years ago. It was before Woodland Scenics came out with their brand of lighting. The advantage of the Eve Model stuff, it's not quite as perfect as the Woodland Scenic stuff, but it's probably about a third or one-fourth the cost. And as you can see, I bought a lot of lights, a lot of signals, and had a lot of experience soldering the connections and wiring about inside buildings and hooking them in down below the layout. There's some nice plaza lights that I use. They're kind of like parking lot kind of lights, and I use them in the rail yard. And there again, you see some light posts that are there at the rail fan viewing area, and some athletic field lights that I found there at Eve Model that were really appropriate for in the intermodal yard. And there's some more of the different street lights that are lighting up the coach yard. So anyway, I've had a lot of experience with that stuff and have enjoyed doing the work. I did it just for fun. You don't really need the lights on the layout, but it certainly adds another dimension. So in the next video, I will be going ahead with hooking up the new signal bridge. Thank you.